Welcome. A question that people often ask today is it necessary to have a proper legal marriage, or is it enough if a couple just live together as husband and wife? And in our studies of the book of Ruth, as we reach today, chapter 4, we're looking at a couple in just such a situation. Ruth, a widow, has come from Moab to Israel, and by Israel's law, she can continue the family of her husband who's died by marrying the nearest relative. She thought that relative was Boaz, but she thought that Boaz wouldn't want to marry her because she was a foreigner. So she made a plan for a secret marriage between the two of them. She went to Boaz in the middle of the night, hoping that Boaz would simply accept her as his wife. But Boaz refused, and he refused for two reasons. One was that there was a relative who was a close relative and so had a better right to marry Ruth. And the other was that Boaz wanted a proper legal marriage. So please turn with me to Ruth chapter 4. My name is Keith Simons. I present these talks on understanding the King James Version of the Bible, looking at each time a different chapter of the Bible, verse by verse, word by word, seeking to understand its meaning. So, turning to Ruth chapter 4, we enter a scene at the town gate at Bethlehem, a very important place in ancient towns. The idea was that there were so many enemies who would attack a town like Bethlehem that it was necessary to build a strong wall all around it with just one entrance, the gate. And that gate became the most important place in the town. It was not just the entrance and exit. It's where traders would gather and establish a market. It was also where the important citizens would sit to hold a court. And that's what happened in this chapter. Verse 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there. And behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, and to whom he said, "Oh, such a one, turn aside, sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. The kinsman, the relative, the closest relative to Ruth and Naomi, passed by. And so Boaz asked this man to sit with him beside the town gate of Bethlehem. Notice the passage does not mention the name of this relative. Boaz presumably called him by his name, but the book of Ruth records simply, "Oh, such a one." Why does the Bible not mention his name? Well, you see, what this relative was about to decide is something that the Bible considers shameful. He didn't want, for his own reasons, to marry Ruth. He didn't want, because he cared about his own inheritance, to accept her and to have a child by her. And the Bible considers that decision shameful. It's as if he's made a selfish decision for his own benefit rather than caring about another person and his family. He wouldn't build up another's name, another's family, so the Bible doesn't record his name. Verse 2, and he, Boaz, took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit ye down here." And they sat down. The city here means Bethlehem. It was usual to call a town with a wall right round it a city, even though in today's terms it would only be the smallest of towns. Nevertheless, this little town had 10 elders. 10 older men recognized as the leaders of their families. These are the judges who can make legal decisions in this town, and they must be the witnesses of this transaction that is about to take place. Verse 3, and he, that's Boaz again, said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land, which was our brother Elimelech's. Okay, so there's this parcel of land which Naomi is selling or has sold. We don't know whether when the family ran into poverty, Naomi, who is Ruth's mother-in-law, at that stage had to sell the land, and what's being asked is to buy back this land, or whether in some way Naomi is selling it now, but Boaz wants it to be kept in the family. Either way, it's necessary for either Boaz or the relative to buy back this land now. And that's why Boaz said in verse 4, and I thought to advertise thee, to draw it to your attention, saying, buy it, before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me that I may know. Okay, the word redeem appears a lot of times there. It means buy it back. If you are willing to buy back this land, then buy it back. But if you are not willing to buy back this land, tell me, I need to know it. The verse continues, for there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Yes, I care enough about this family and the future of this family to buy back a plot of land. I care enough to do an act of charity to help Naomi and to keep that land in the family. But Boaz is disappointed with that answer, because it's public knowledge in Bethlehem the situation of Ruth and Ruth's right to marry the closest relative, and so to continue the family of Elimelech into which she married. So Boaz expresses his disappointment with the relative in verse 5. Then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of Naomi, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, on the day that you buy that field from Naomi's hand, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Okay, the reference here, if you want to look it up, is Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 to 10. It's a duty to marry the widow so that he can raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, so that that land has someone to own it, so that forevermore that family can be associated with its land. Because you see, Ruth has no child from her dead husband. But if she can marry the closest relative of her dead husband, God will accept that as the continuance of that family. And that family will continue to have that land in Israel and that connection with Israel. Boaz is telling this relative it's his duty, but although the Bible describes it as a duty, it's not an obligation. It's something which he should do for the sake of honour, but he's not absolutely forced to do it. He has the freedom to refuse it, and that is exactly what this relative does in verse 6. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. So now he's saying he can't buy back the land, because buying back the land also means marrying Ruth. He's not prepared to do it, lest I mar mine own inheritance. I've got my own inheritance in this land. I've got my own property. I'm going to mar it, damage it. I'm going to cause trouble for myself, and for that reason I am not prepared to marry Ruth. And because I can't marry Ruth, I can't buy the land either. So the relative says to Boaz, second half of the verse, redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. I can't buy it back, so I'm standing aside. I'm the closest relative, but you're second in line, so you can buy it if you wish to. You can buy that field and you can marry Ruth. Verse 7. Now this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. So this was the tradition that there was in Israel. Whenever there was a transaction that involved redeeming, buying back property, or which involved changing, exchanging one thing for another, in order to produce evidence for it, there was this tradition. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbour, and this was a testimony in Israel. So to show that this transaction had finally and definitely been decided, the man took off his shoe and handed it over, and that acted as evidence, legal evidence, that this arrangement had been made. Therefore, verse 8, the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. The decision has been made and it's final. Now the relative cannot go back on his decision. Now Boaz is free to make the decision. It was a tradition. It was a tradition at the time of the book of Ruth, which provided evidence of a legal transaction having taken place. But where did this tradition come from? The answer is in God's law. You'll find it in Deuteronomy 25, 5-10, the very passage we quoted earlier, showing the right of the widow to marry the closest relative. What it declares is that if a relative does not want to marry the widow, that is shameful. And it's so shameful that as a sort of punishment or an insult of that relative, he must lose his shoe. Now, when Boaz discussed this with his nearest relative, and this arrangement was made in the gateway of the town of Bethlehem, and when he took off his shoe to show the transaction complete, he seemed not to realise that the Bible considered his decision shameful. Why was that decision shameful? Because it was a decision to think about himself rather than to think about another man's family. He didn't care enough for the family of his relative who died. He only thought about himself and his own family. Therefore, the Bible doesn't approve of that man's actions. Now it falls to Boaz to decide what to do. And now we see a legal marriage. A legal marriage which takes place in the presence of the leaders of Bethlehem and all the people who've gathered there at this busiest place at the town gate. And it begins with a speech by Boaz. Verse 9, and Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, that was Naomi's husband, the mother-in-law of Ruth, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's, the two sons of Elimelech, of the hand of Naomi. So he's bought all the property, the whole of this field which was being sold. Moreover, verse 10, in addition, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife. Okay, it sounds strange to describe her being purchased to be the wife. She's not being purchased in the sense of a slave being purchased. It's more the sense of he's acquired her. He's agreed to enter into this legal arrangement, and he understands fully that part of it is not just that he takes over the property of Elimelech and his sons, but also he takes over responsibility for the widow. And what's he going to do with Ruth? Well, by means of this marriage, he's going to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. He's going to have a child by Ruth, and that child will continue that family's name and the link to that plot of land in Israel that belonged specifically to that family. Why? That the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day. So he doesn't want the names of these people who've died to be forgotten. He wants them to be remembered, and he wants them to be remembered in a very specific way, because he wants this family to continue by means of the child who will be born to Ruth. And that's a bold decision. You know, God cares about each of his people. God cares about each family in Israel. And Boaz's decision means that this family, which would have vanished totally, can continue. And who knows but that family might become the greatest of all Israel's families. Who knows but that family might become Israel's royal family, which would provide the kings of Israel, and in a long time in the future after this event, that God's Messiah would be born into that family. But that, of course, is what will happen as we turn the pages of the Bible from here. But back to the wedding ceremony, and there is a reply made by all these people who've gathered together. They want to bless Boaz and Ruth on this, their wedding day. They want to make this legal marriage complete by declaring their approval and their agreement with the decision that Ruth and Boaz have made. You see, it's a great act of faith of Boaz and of Ruth. Ruth could have tried to marry anyone. She was still a young woman. She was attractive, certainly in her personality. She had the opportunity to marry anyone. And Boaz could have just continued the life he had until then and been like his relative who would not marry Ruth and mar his inheritance. But no, they made this decision in faith, in trusting God, and the people who were there saw it, and they responded with a tremendous blessing upon Boaz and Ruth that day. Verse 11, and all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. Rachel and Leah, the wives of Jacob, from whose families and the families of their maids the 12 tribes of Israel came. And they're praying this tremendous blessing upon Ruth and upon Boaz, that their family will be a great family like that. And they continue, do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. Oh, may this family not just be remembered in Bethlehem, but may it be famous there. And you'll see the ancient name of Bethlehem appearing again there, Ephratah, Bethlehem, Ephratah. You'll remember that great prophecy in the book of Micah, where Bethlehem is described as Bethlehem Ephratah. It's Micah 5:2. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. That, of course, is the prophecy which the New Testament quotes when it tells us that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Back to the book of Ruth, and the people continue with another blessing on Ruth and on Boaz. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bore unto Judah, the seed of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. Tamar and Judah. Oh dear, that's a reference to the book of Genesis and chapter 38. And before you turn to it, let me just warn you, that is the one other occasion, clear occasion, that the Bible tells us of a widow who wanted to have a child by the family of a relative of her deceased husband. And Tamar was truly desperate to have relatives, children. Tamar was truly desperate to have children by which she could continue Judah's family. But she didn't choose a legal marriage. She chose to tempt Judah. That is a shocking chapter. But that is how Judah's people came into existence. And now Ruth has done the same thing, but not by tempting Boaz, by having a proper legal marriage to Boaz, a proper legal marriage. And so if God blessed even the house of Pharez, even Tamar, when she had children in fact, by such an unsatisfactory method, then let your house, Boaz, and the house of Ruth be like that house. May it have abundant future generations, the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. Well, it means a child, but it's thinking of future generations, just as a farmer has to sow his seed year after year after year. There have to be many, many generations in this family. And the people are praying that this family will continue of many, many generations. So there is the legal marriage, but of course it's not complete until Boaz and Ruth go together in private. And verse 13 records that. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception. And she bare a son. Ruth becomes pregnant, and she gives birth to a son. And the people see with great joy, this promise has been fulfilled. It's really happened. This family can continue into future generations. And we turn our attention to the women of Bethlehem. The women of Bethlehem who prophetically see what God is doing in this situation. And they turn not to Ruth, but to Naomi, to Ruth's mother-in-law, because it is her family that is continued through Ruth having this child. And the women said unto Naomi, verse 14, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. Verse 15, and he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. Oh, we bless God, and we thank God for the good things which he's done this day, because he's not left you without a relative, a kinsman, to continue your family in the future. It does seem that the rest of verse 14 and verse 15 are about this son who's been born, that his name may be famous in Israel. He's going to be famous in Israel. He's going to be a truly great man, a restorer of thy life. He's going to bring you strength in your old age. He's going to nourish you. Why? Because you couldn't have a child, but your daughter-in-law, Ruth, has had a child, and she's made this thing possible that your family can continue through this baby who has been born. The verse says, end of verse 15, for thy daughter-in-law which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. Better to thee than 7 sons. Naomi actually just had 2 sons, and they both disappointed her in that they both died without leaving children. But the daughter-in-law, Ruth, well, she made up for the shortfall of what they could not do, because she's married, a member of the family, after she's been made a widow, out of love to Naomi. And out of love for Naomi, she's had this child who is going to look after you as you get old. And, this was Ruth's child, but Naomi wanted a close relationship with that child. Verse 16 records, and Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom and became nurse unto it. Well, obviously, Naomi can't breastfeed the child. Ruth must do that. But Naomi, in other senses, adopted the child, holding it in her bosom, caring for that child, and looking after that child as if she were the mother. Verse 17, and the women, her neighbours, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi. Yes, they said, there is a son born to Naomi. Well, of course, he wasn't. That baby was born to Ruth. But it was as if that son was born to Naomi. And with joy they saw that Naomi's husband Elimelech's family was continuing. And the women gave a name to that child. That's rather remarkable, because it would usually be the father who gave a name to his son. But the women, they called his name Obed. It means servant. Maybe it means a servant of God. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. David, King David, God's choice to rule Israel, the man who loved God with all his heart. Yes, this really was the story of Israel's royal family and how it came into being through the great faith of Ruth and of Boaz. The book continues, or rather finishes, with a note, a record of the genealogy, the family history. And it says in verse 18, now these are the generations of Pharez. That's the same Pharez who was mentioned in verse 12, the son of Judah. Pharez begat Hezron. Begat means became the father of, although we think that there's gaps in the record here, and so it might mean grandfather or something like that. And Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nahshon. And Nahshon is interesting because he's described in 1 Chronicles 2:10 as the prince of Judah. And the leader of Judah's army led Israel's army in war. Judges 1:1 and 2. This was a family with a great history and with a great future. Nahshon begat Salmon, verse 21, and Salmon begat Boaz, the Boaz who we've been reading about, who married Ruth, and Boaz begat Obed, the baby born at the end of this account. Verse 22, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our studies in the book of Ruth. Next time we're going to just turn the page in our King James Bible and look at the first chapter of the book of 1 Samuel. In a moment I'm going to read you the whole of Ruth chapter 4, but first let me give you my email address so that you can write to me, 333kjv@gmail.com. My name again is Keith Simons, and it would be lovely to hear where in the world you are, and if you're in the United States, which of the states. Please tell people about these talks, encourage them to listen. I hope to be doing plenty more in the weeks and months ahead. So the email address again, 333kjv@gmail.com. And here from the King James Bible is the whole of Ruth chapter 4. Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there. And behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi, that is come again out of the country of Moab, selleth a parcel of land which was her brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, saying, Buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then said Boaz, What day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now, this was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things. A man plucked off his shoe and gave it his neighbour, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, Buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, Ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Kilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, We are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephraim, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife, and when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the women, her neighbours, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now, these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David.